Hello and welcome to Who Wore It Better, where I review Raw and Smackdown back to back and try and figure out which show won for the week. Well, this week was the Superstar Shakeup. All four major brands of the company were affected, not just Raw and Smackdown, but also 205 Live and NXT. We'll get to that in a little bit. Now, similar to last year's Superstar Shakeup, the way I'm going to be judging Raw and Smackdown this week and determining a winner is not going to be based on how the shows overall did as a cohesive, product, but rather basically which show got the better end of the stick with the Superstar Shakeup. And for each talent that gets moved from place to place, I'm going to rank them individually using an incredibly scientific system, a rating system from great to good to meh. Raw begins with Stephanie and Shane McMahon opening the show. Shane's gloating about what he did to The Miz at WrestleMania in the Falls Count Anywhere match. Sure enough, The Miz shows up, jumps Shane from behind. They have a big fracas, and in the process, Shane actually makes Miz bleed hard way, but Miz gets his comeuppance, walloping Shane a few times with the chair. Shane runs away. A bloody Miz stands tall. Kind of a cool badass shot for him there. So yeah, Miz is now on Raw. It seems like this is the way they are going to kind of tie up that storyline between the two of them. Miz doesn't get the win at WrestleMania, but he does get a small bit of revenge against Shane on the back end of it. So that's probably the way they're going to kind of have him kind of holding his head up as he goes to Raw from here on out. I'm going to rank Miz's move to Raw as good because he's a top star who spent almost the entirety of this last year on SmackDown feuding either with Daniel Bryan or doing some kind of storyline with Shane McMahon, either as partners or as rivals. In the past year, we've seen Miz both at his most douchey and then later on at probably his biggest, strongest babyface run to date in his lengthy career. The loss at Mania doesn't help his momentum that much going forward, but him getting a bit of revenge, like I said, on Shane on Raw, did kind of help correct some of that, and so lots of interesting potential matchups for him now that weren't really available to him on SmackDown, or the last time he was on Raw for that matter. 8-man tag match up next as GAAAAAHHHH, who are now officially on Raw as of this time, team up with Hawkins and Ryder, the tag team champions, to go against the Revival and the Viking Experience. Yes, you've heard this name echoed a lot on social media in the last, 48 hours or so. The current NXT Tag Team Champions, Hanson and Rowe, the War Raiders, formerly known as War Machine before they got signed, are now the Viking Experience. Very interesting turn of events with this name change. And not only that, they got new names as well. Ivar and Eric. It's just, I'm not mad. I'm not as mad about this name change as some people are. Some people are furious they changed their name to the Viking Experience. I'm not in that camp. I am disappointed. Now, on the one hand, I understand that, you can't say war, on the main roster. Okay, fine. If that's their rationale, then I get them changing the name. It hasn't been Raw is War since 9/11, for example. So yeah, war, we don't want to use that word if we can help it, basically. So I get why they changed it. But Viking Experience is a bit of it's a clunky name. It's kind of a dorky name. It doesn't really doesn't make you feel like, ooh, war. Yeah, I'm going to go to war with these Vikings. The Viking Experience. It's just really weird. Now, they've changed names after changing them the first time in the past. You've seen alterations to names as things goes on. I don't think they're going to stay the Viking Experience forever. I wish they would at least keep their names of Hanson and Rowe. I don't see what the problem with those names were, but no, they got to be Ivar and Eric or whatever. And, I think things will change over time. I don't think it's the worst name in the world. It's not the best, but there you go. Anyway, the Viking Experience looked okay in their debut. They beat Ryder with the Fallout to win. The fact they were with the Revival in this match at all makes me think they're going to be debuting as heels. I hope they don't get bushwhackered in all this because they do kind of they're on the edge where they could kind of go, kind of like what Heavy Machinery was like, where they can go either they can be a serious team or they can be a fun, goofy team. And this name change they've got where they're officially Vikings now, to me, makes me worry they're going to go in that latter camp, the goofy, the bushwhacker camp, so to speak. But, it's only been one night. We will see how it goes. As far as the teams that are now officially on Raw as a result of the shakeup, I'm going to say GAAAAAHHH. It's good on that rating of great, good, or meh. It at least gives them some kind of direction now because for the last month or so, they've been bopping around between Raw and SmackDown. No real definitive path for them, but now they're officially, on Raw for good. And so at least now we can have some kind of better creative direction for them. For the Viking experience, I would give them a meh. I feel that them making their debut in the main roster, I feel it got dampened a little bit, the impact of that, the oomph of that, because they were involved in this 8-man tag team matchup with all these other bodies being involved. It does kind of hinder them a little bit. The line is blurred whether they're face or heel because, their gimmick is very face friendly. It's very fan friendly. They do the chant thing and, all that stuff, and the fans are into them. They're over like Rover in NXT, and I know the transition from NXT and main roster. I'm aware of that. Not everybody watches NXT. I'm fully aware of this, so I'm not going to use that as a barometer, but just the way they came out also and the way they were received, they are kind of fan friendly. So for them to be with the Revival here kind of muddies the waters. We will see what happens with them as the weeks go on, but yeah, I mean, like, the Viking experience thing, it was definitely that name change. It's so jarring, you can't help but get off to kind of a wonky start. They reveal in a vignette that Cedric Alexander's coming to Raw from 205 Live. I'm going to give that a good rating. It's just kind of in the middle for me. I think it's going to be a good move for him overall. I think anyone who moves from 205 Live to the broader audience of Raw, in theory, is helpful to their careers. I think that, Cedric is one of the many cruiserweights they have right now who are very similar in size to some of the top stars in the company, both Raw and SmackDown. So I think that you can have a lot of very exciting matchups between, I think Cedric being in some way connected with those smaller top guys, I think will help him in the long run. Finn Balor shows up. He's in a non-title match against Andrade. He and Zelina Vega are now officially on Raw. Andrade speaks a bit of French and Spanish before the match begins. Great match between these two. Zelina gets involved near the end with the Hurricane Rana on the outside. Andrade hits the Hammerlock DDT to win the match. So big pivotal win, big first win on Raw for Andrade. I give his move to Raw a great rating. He was kind of in a bit of a holding pattern in the last several weeks because once his feud with Rey fizzled out, there wasn't really much going for him going into WrestleMania. But I mean, his talent is undeniable. He was one of the shining beacons of talent on SmackDown for the last several months. So him going to Raw, I think, would just be better for him because Raw, it is the show that gets a bit more love from the people in charge. So I can imagine, and again, you've got some people who are coming from SmackDown to Raw that I think will help make his transition go a bit more smoothly, and I'll get to that. But yeah, I think, sky's the limit for Andrade on Raw. It's Elias time. In his promo, he makes a reference to the Montreal Canadiens and how they failed to make the playoffs, and he got almost a Seattle Supersonics-like response from the crowd there. Montreal, across both shows, were very hot for the bulk of the programming. Rey Mysterio interrupts. They fight for a bit. Rey botches a move coming off the ropes, but he hits Elias anyway. Elias runs away, and then Lars Sullivan shows up. So then he beats up Rey for a bit after Rey has some moments of hope. But yeah, Lars stands tall. However, Lars is not going to Raw permanently. Rey is. He is now back on Monday Night Raw. I give Rey's move to Raw a meh rating because I feel like he was, similar to Andrade being in a holding pattern for the last few weeks. I thought Rey's, trajectory got even more stagnant, being in that feud with Samoa Joe that got like zero build, and the match itself was disappointing because he was hurt. How hurt is he though if he shows up on Raw just a week after WrestleMania when they had to cut the match short? I feel like he can kind of work with either brand and do well because the majority of the people he's working with are going to be bigger guys anyway, so it's not like there's going to be a huge difference in height or size for him compared to other people. Like I said a minute ago, with Andrade, I think that he and Rey can reignite their feud on a stage like Raw and maybe not pound it into the ground like they did on SmackDown, but do some kind of revival of that and run with it and hopefully have a good payoff that we were kind of deprived of on SmackDown. But yeah, right now, where Rey is on the pecking order and how things have gone recently for him, have to give it a meh rating. Ruble are in the ring. We get a minor spoiler of what's going to happen in about 30 seconds when we see a lower third graphic that says the Usos, when Chad and Bobby are clearly there, not the Usos. They issue an open challenge, and like we on the TV audience saw moments before, the Usos answer the open challenge. The former SmackDown Tag Team Champions have been on the blue brand forever and a day, and so now they are here on Raw. They win in impressive fashion fashion with a double splash on Gable. I'm going to give the Usos to Raw move a great rating. You know, the Usos bring a level of star power and credibility to a tag team division on Raw that right now is sorely lacking in both of those departments. And so, I mean, as fun as it was to watch the Usos wrestle the Bar and the New Day every week, that does get old after a while. So at least them being to Raw does kind of change up their weekly opponents, and will hopefully, you know, the phrase I've used before, rising tide floats all ships. And so I think the Usos coming to Raw will be a great move for the tag division on Raw. It's a moment of bliss with Sami Zayn as the special guest. This was just a really funny, brilliant segment with these two, because Sami comes out to a big ovation. Everyone's singing along to his theme because it's Montreal, it's where he's from and everything. He does the whole dance. He sits down. They play it again. He does the dance. They sing along. He sits down again. He's blown. They play it one more time, and he does the dance. And they're singing along. He's like, it's too easy, shooting fish in a barrel. He puts over the city of Montreal while simultaneously burying the people of Montreal. He says he's going to his home in sunny Orlando, Florida. See you in hell, and leaves. Apparently, see you in hell is his new catchphrase, which I think is hilarious. It's just so like it's really bland saying, but the way he keeps talking about it, to me, it's like it's a way to maybe possibly get it over. But yeah, I am really enjoying Sami's new character. Sasha Banks is reportedly either on her way out of WWE or at least very vocally voicing her displeasure. So no matter what the scuttlebutt is, no one really knows for sure. Sasha's not there on Monday night. She's been kind of written off, and so Bayley's all by her lonesome going against the Iconics. But wait, in Sasha's place is Naomi, making her way over from SmackDown to Raw. The two take out the women's tag team champions in relatively quick fashion, and there you go. I'm going to give Naomi to Raw a meh rating. I was kind of bordering between that and good. I'm going to give it a meh. You know, it's good for her because she's been on SmackDown for so long since the brand split first began that I think, if anything, it will give her some fresh opponents to go after. You know, I don't see her getting any title programs soon, though, based on what's happening, because she's a face, Becky's a baby face. As long as Becky's the champ, I don't see Naomi in any kind of worthwhile storylines for the time being. We see the Brave Bird box once again, and EC3 comes out. He's demanding competition, and he gets Braun Strowman. EC3 is summarily murdered in one of the biggest beatdowns I've ever seen. EC3 officially to Raw gets a big old meh. If I could rank lower than a meh, it's a meh minus. Poor EC3. He was better off at NXT. I would reckon he actually was better off at Impact than what he's doing now on the main roster. Like, he had a lot of upside at NXT. You know, you could argue they brought him up a little too soon, and then based on what we saw on Monday, oof, who did he piss off? Good Lord. In a full screen graphic, they reveal that Eric Young of Sanity is moving to Raw soon. I'm going to give this one a meh rating. I mean, really, there's nowhere to go but up for him at this point, based on how criminally underutilized Sanity was while they were on SmackDown. How poorly they were handled is kind of ridiculous. But now it seems as though Alexander Wolf is out of the company based on his little farewell address on Twitter. And presumably Killian Dane's going to stay on SmackDown for now. They didn't say what they were doing with him, but EY is going to be on Raw for the time being. I would like to see him get one last, like, decent storyline, something going on with just him, for all he's done in wrestling, mostly in TNA, obviously. But, you know, for considering, you know, and again, I'm making that comparison to NXT again, considering how well he was portrayed as the head of Sanity on NXT, I'd like to see him get something he can really sink his teeth into once he's a singles guy on Raw. Becky Lynch in a non-title matchup against Ruby Riott. It's a good match. They're making Becky look very strong here. She wins the Disarm Her on Ruby, beats up Logan and Morgan for good measure, and stands tall. Then we get a backstage promo with the reunited Team Baddie. That's Drew McIntyre, Baron Corbin, and Bobby Lashley. Oh, how I've missed you three working together, boring the piss out of me. They're cutting a promo regarding the main event match for later in the night, where it's going to be six-man tag action as Team Baddie takes on Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, and a SmackDown talent coming over to be named. Who is dumb enough to team with Seth and Roman? Who, Leo asks you. Becky Lynch is still in the ring after her match. Natalya shows up. She gets on the microphone and basically reiterates to everyone what happened at WrestleMania for Becky. She says she wants a shot at the Raw title. Becky responds, bringing up their shared past touring together in Europe when they were much younger before they both got signed. Before she can make an official response, though, Lacey Evans interrupts, and she speaks. She declares she's officially on Raw. She kind of implies she slept her way into favor with the McMahons to get a number #1 contendership match against Natalya right then and there. We have a match, Lacey and Natalya. It's Lacey's first singles match on Raw since getting called up back in January. And it's a really strong match here. Lacey gets to show off a lot of her abilities in the ring, which she really hasn't had a chance to show since the Royal Rumble match back in January. She hits the women's right and the marrow salt. I don't know what it's called for her, but I'm going to call it the marrow salt to win the match. Really great, strong showing for her here. I'm going to give Lacey officially on Monday Night Raw a good rating. I think the women's division on Raw needs some freshening up, especially on Raw. I think Lacey can really help accomplish that, and Naomi to a lesser extent. I think Lacey is especially different for those who aren't familiar with her work at NXT. Now, granted, her character in the main roster is drastically different than what she did on NXT, like by a wide margin. But I think this match in particular is a very good showing for her. You can really see a lot of her athletic ability. You got to see some of her character. You got to hear some of her promo ability. So this was a pretty good showing for Lacey. I don't want to give it the great rating just yet, but I think there's a lot of upside for her on Raw. We get a backstage interview from Seth and Roman talking about the main event. In the middle of what they're saying, the third man, the person from Smackdown to be named, almost spoils it because you see the door open behind Seth and Roman. You see kind of like a figure there. Oh, nope, close the door. So that's pretty funny. They almost kind of botched that. Then we see a creepy doll showing up in a dark room. It's the same music as the Bray Bird in a box from earlier, and there's a creepy doll laughing, jump cut scare thing, and that's how it ends. So clearly this is tied to the Bray Bird box. I'm going to name that doll Abby something. Main event time as Team Baddie take on the team of Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, and AJ Styles, the former champ who ran the camp, the face who ran the place, the man who built the Smackdown house, has now made his way to Raw for the first time since the brand split began, and that's very exciting. I know last year there were rumors he was going to go there, but obviously it didn't happen, so now it does happen. Anyway, this match is pretty good. You get a moment where Drew tries to recreate what he did to Roman a few weeks ago, like kicking him against the turnbuckle post, but Seth makes the save, Drew goes flying. We get a spear on Lashley, followed by the phenomenal forearm from Styles for the exclamation point, and the good guys win. So as far as AJ Styles going to Raw, I give it a great rating. I think it's a big shot in the arm for the Red Show in the top tier babyface department. Somebody who, unlike a certain someone who was on his team, someone most fans can get behind. And after holding the title for over a year on SmackDown, it's time to see what AJ can do on Mondays. He's pretty much done all there is to do on SmackDown, so I think it's nothing but a great move for him to go to Raw. SmackDown opens up with the Kevin Owens show, and Kevin gets a massive hero's welcome in his hometown of Montreal, opens the show up in French Canadian, brings out his guests Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods. Big E, unfortunately, is out with a knee injury. Kevin mentions he wants to become an honorary member of the New Day, and so get some funny back and forth between he and Xavier and Kofi. The New Day is down for it. The crowd is down for it. So we'll be seeing a six-man tag team match as the kind of tweaked version of New Day go against Nakamura and Cesaro, who conspicuous in his absence is Sheamus. They're saying he's injured. So Cesaro is there. He's going to be teaming up with Rusev and Nakamura in the main event. After the opening segment, we see now that Finn Balor, the IC champion, is on SmackDown. One thing that's consistent between Raw and SmackDown is apparently he's always still the first guy to show up after the opening segment. Mr. 820, Finn Balor. This does raise an interesting question regarding the placement of the U.S. title. It was speculated that Samoa Joe was supposed to be part of Raw, but he was out with the flu. So I would imagine they're going to do a make good on Monday and have Joe show up next Monday to restore the balance of the mid-card title seen across Raw and SmackDown. Can't have them both on one show, but that's purely speculative on my part. Finn takes on Ali in singles action. A great match. Very fast-paced, high-impact stuff. Finn seems to put a little bit extra mustard on that coup de grace. As far as Finn moving to SmackDown, I give it a great rating. Would have been nice to see him get a proper, run or program for the Universal Championship on Raw. The title he never lost. He was the first Universal Champion, of course. Would have been nice to see him get something better than just kind of a one-off with Brock Lesnar. But I think he's going to do well on SmackDown. I think right now, I think SmackDown is slightly skewed more toward guys his size to put on those kind of matches. Raw had those as well, but I think SmackDown is better suited for that style of performance. So I think Finn will do quite nicely on the blue brand. And yeah, short of getting that program for the Universal title, I've pretty much done all he could on Raw. Backstage, Kevin Owens, who's been rechristened tonight as Big O in place of Big E. I wonder how Zack Ryder's friend on True Long Island Story feels about that. His initiation process getting into the New Day is eating a platter full of cold pancakes under a certain time limit. Corey Graves with the call of the night saying, I didn't think Kevin ate carbs. Charlotte takes on Carmella in singles action up next. Last time these two fought, had any kind of considerable program, the roles were reversed. Now Charlotte is the heel and Carmella the babyface. Another good match. Charlotte wins with the figure 8, and then after that match is over, Lars Sullivan shows up once again. Apparently now he's officially on SmackDown. He destroys R-Truth in the process. As far as him officially being on SmackDown now, I give it a meh rating. Like I said last week, he is the monster of the month, as it were. He's getting all of the beatdowns and stuff, and we're going to see some more of that, I would imagine, once he's on SmackDown. Doesn't matter what show he's on if he's doing that kind of thing until he finally gets into a proper program and actually has some matches. We shall see where he goes, but right now my expectations for him are kind of muted, which is why I give him the meh rating. Becky Lynch comes out to cut a promo. Nice attention to detail she's been having the last couple of weeks, where she will always wear one of her titles around her waist, and she alternates which one she's wearing based on what show she's on. Nice little attention to detail there. She's cutting the promo, but she's cut off by Ember Moon, who's making her way back on television since her injury. She was in the Women's Battle Royal at Mania, but this is her first real TV time since her return. And then Bayley comes out as well, and so she's getting booed for some reason, which I thought was interesting. The Iconics arrive. They talk some trash. Then Paige comes out. She's going to introduce the tag team she was hyping up last week, the Fire and Desire. Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville come out. So we think for a second the Absolution's reuniting, but that's not the case. Paige introduces her new team of Asuka, and the newcomer to SmackDown, Kairi Sane, the former NXT Women's Champion, is now making her way onto SmackDown, teaming with Asuka. I would have liked to have seen both members of the Sky Pirates get called up, but such is life. Asuka needs something to do, apparently, so let's put her in a team with Kairi Sane. We get a big lady brawl. Becky quietly escapes the ring as we go to commercial break. Then we have an 8-woman tag team match as Fire and Desire and the Iconics take on Asuka, Kairi Sane, Bayley, and Ember Moon. All the women get their stuff in near the end. Kairi wins for her team with an insane elbow on Peyton Royce, and there you have it. So right now, the SmackDown Women's Division gets a huge shot in the arm with 3 talents making their way from Raw and NXT. As far as Ember Moon, I'm going to give her a great rating. I feel there's nowhere to go but up for her. She didn't get much of a chance on Raw before her injury that took her out for several months, but I think that the stuff she did was great stuff in ring, so I'd like to see her do some more of what she can do on SmackDown. Bayley, I also say a great rating. The timing could not be better for her because, I've been wanting her to move to SmackDown for ages. I felt that was really necessary for a long time. I feel it's long overdue she's on SmackDown. Plus, she needs to distance herself from the Sasha Banks controversy as soon as possible, and I think this is a great way to do that. Where Sasha Banks ends up in all this is, anyone's guess, and whether or not the scuttlebutt and what the internet is saying about what happened with Sasha, again, no true confirmation about that. It's all kind of speculation at this point, but no matter what happens with her, I think Bayley being on her own again and being on SmackDown is a good thing for Bayley. As for Kairi Sane, I give her a good rating for the call-up. I think, she's been a great presence on NXT, short of teaming more with Io Shirai and possibly getting called up with her together. I think she's done all she really can do on the yellow brand. I think SmackDown will be a good fit for her, and I think her teaming with the established character in Asuka will be a good way to introduce her to fans who aren't familiar with her work on NXT. But yeah, I don't think it's a huge milestone. I wouldn't put it in the great category just yet. We'll see what happens with her, where she pans out. As far, with being part of a tag team, it does kind of limit you in a way, but I am excited to see what she can do on SmackDown. Buddy Murphy announces he's going to SmackDown soon. Much like how I rated Cedric Alexander going to Raw, I'm going to give old Bud Murph to SmackDown a good rating. Obviously, he's done very well for himself on 205 Live, holding the Cruiserweight Championship for several months, delivering awesome matches. like I said, similar to Cedric, lots of guys on SmackDown are kind of his size to begin with. So I think, you know, that those styles will mesh fairly well. And so I think Buddy moving to SmackDown, main roster television, you know, he's done all he can on 205 Live. He's beaten everyone there is to beat. So give him a fresh set of opponents on a main roster show. Nothing but good can happen with that. In your final match of the evening, the New Day and Big O take on Cesaro and Nakamura in six-man tag action. Pretty entertaining stuff by all of the guys involved. Kevin, you know, doing the New Day stuff and getting into it, I thought was pretty entertaining as well. He hits Rusev with a stunner who sells it like a snapmare, and the good guys win the match. In your final segment, Mr. McMahon comes out to welcome the newest acquisition, the biggest acquisition to SmackDown. It's Elias, and Elias immediately botches the opening minor chord on his way out. He cuts a bit of a promo, gets ready to play a song, but Roman Reigns interrupts. So SmackDown got Roman in exchange for losing AJ Styles. I feel it's a very fair trade. Roman beats up Elias, hits him with a Superman punch, hits Vince with a Superman punch as well. I love how Elias catches him on the way down. Vince doesn't do a full fall. Roman says SmackDown is his yard now. He poses. What a way to end the show. I felt that Roman going to SmackDown was kind of an inevitability after seeing Styles move to Raw. Well, he's got to go. You know, obviously Seth wasn't moving, and they need another big babyface to counteract Styles leaving. So Roman makes the most sense. I'm going to say Elias moving to SmackDown. I'm going to give that a good rating because, you know, I think he's, again, kind of a situation where he did pretty much all he could do on Raw. He was kind of spinning his wheels the last few months since turning heel once again. So I'd like to see what he can do with a fresh set of opponents and fresh angles on SmackDown. Roman, I'm going to give it a great rating. Again, a guy who's done pretty much all he can do on Raw. I mean, the constant feuding with Lesnar over the last year for the Universal Championship and how that ended, and with Seth kind of keeping things locked it down for a while on Raw, it seems, as the Universal Champion. It stands to reason. It makes a whole lot of sense for Reigns to go to SmackDown and have a whole bunch of new people to spear and Superman punch. Get him away from Baron Corbin. Get him away from Drew McIntyre and Bobby Lashley ASAP. I want to see him take on new guys. Finally, they announced online a fair number of names who are moving to SmackDown they didn't have a time to address on television. I'll run through those right now. Liv Morgan is going to SmackDown, effectively breaking up the Riot Squad. I'm going to give this a Matt rating because I feel that out of all the members of the Riot Squad, she was the weakest, being Liv, in terms of character and, you know, showing off the personality. So hopefully she'll get a chance to show more of that personality as a singles competitor, but right now she's kind of at a handicap because she is the least developed of the three Riot Squad members. As far as Chad Gable is going to SmackDown now, breaking up Ruble. I think it's good to see him back on SmackDown. I think he was really on the cusp of something really special before they moved him to Raw, doing the singles thing before they slotted him with Shelton Benjamin as a tag team. But I think as a singles guy, Chad has a lot of upside. Apollo Crews also moving to SmackDown. I also give that a good rating. He's kind of been just kind of lost in the shuffle, kind of in the mid-range for a while on Raw, and so SmackDown hopefully will do him some good. Mickie James is moving to SmackDown. I give that a Matt rating. She is one of the lower tier women right now, so not doing a whole lot to speak of. You know, can only go up from here on SmackDown, but right now there's not a whole lot of hype surrounding her. And Heavy Machinery is now officially going to SmackDown, because I guess if the Viking Experience is going to be goofy on Raw, then I guess you have to have one goofy team on SmackDown to balance things out. So they're a meh for me too. Time now for me to decide which show got the better shakeup, Raw or SmackDown. Again, I am not judging this week's shows based on which overall show was better, but rather which show got the better end of the stick in terms of talent exchanges. And for this week, I award the point to SmackDown. I feel that SmackDown got more people that I am curious to see, more people I feel will do better on SmackDown than they were on Raw. I also feel with Raw, they got a lot of people who were already kind of like just jumping around between shows a lot, like Aleister Black and Ricochet, like EC3, like Lacey Evans, people who we've already kind of seen, and so them coming to Raw isn't as huge a deal because we've been seeing them so much already at this point, so their oomph was kind of minimized. With SmackDown, I think they got, the better end of the stick. They got, Roman Reigns, who is a bigger star than AJ Styles, and I think him going to SmackDown is better for SmackDown than I feel that Styles going to Raw is for Raw, if that makes any sense. But I think that they also have just a stronger core of people who are going from SmackDown to Raw. hopefully will be better utilized. I feel that, again, trading styles for Reigns is the right call. Sucks they had to break up a couple of tag teams and trios in this process. I think the SmackDown Women's Division has drastically improved in face value alone based on who they brought in. But as far as those teams and trios I mentioned that broke up, perhaps better things will come for the individual members as a result of the shakeup. But for right now, I have to say that SmackDown probably got the better class this year for the shakeup. Let me know what you thought about Raw and SmackDown this week in the comments section below. Be sure to vote which show you thought got the better shakeup in the gimmick in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.